Hey guys, David the Fishing Pastor here, and today we're talking about the Texas rig. The Texas rig is by far one of the most widely used rigs in all of bass fishing, and it's definitely one of my favorites. So today I want to teach you about how to rig up and properly fish the Texas rig. Okay, so let's start off talking about the gear that I use to throw a Texas rig on and the different components that make up a Texas rig. When I'm throwing a Texas rig, I like to use fast reels and rods with a little bit more power behind them. So today I'm using my KastKing Speed Demon Baitcast reel. This is a 9.3 to 1 gear ratio reel. It's a very high speed reel. And for the rod, I'm using my KastKing Royale Legend rod. This is a 7'3" fast action heavy rod. So it has that backbone, it has that power, but it also has that tip so that I can feel those bites. So here's some of the items that you need for a Texas rig. Number one, bullet weights. Now either in lead or in tungsten, but you want bullet weights because they have a flat bottom that can sit flush on top of the bait. Number two, you'll want some bobber stops or punch stops. Now these are kind of debated on whether or not you need them or what situations you need them in, but it's always a good thing to have for Texas rigs. Now you'll also need some hooks. Now there's different styles of hooks. There's the more straight shanked hooks, and then there's the extra wide gap hooks. And I use both depending on the situation. Now if I'm casting my Texas rig out more into open water, I usually use the wide gap hook. I really like how it sits flush on those baits. And then if I'm flipping into cover, I'm going to use more of a flipping style hook, which even has a grip pin there so that the bait doesn't slide down the hook as easily. The other thing that will determine what kind of hook I use is the type of bait that I'm throwing. So let me talk about some baits real quick. So when it comes to the Texas rig, you can throw such a wide variety of baits. One of my favorites are the creature baits or the hog style baits here like this one. And I'm generally throwing this on an extra wide gap hook. With these I can cast them out, I can flip into cover, whatever I need. Now if I'm doing some more heavy flipping and I'm using those flipping style hooks, those straight shank, then I actually like the beaver style baits. I feel like if these actually go into cover a little bit better, if you're throwing into thick vegetation, things like that, I'm generally going to throw this style bait, but again, the possibilities are endless. You can throw a stick bait or Senko style bait. You can throw ribbon tail worms. Honestly, you can throw such a wide variety of baits. And the great thing is that with a Texas rig, you're throwing a weedless presentation, so you're able to get in and out of cover a lot easier than with other presentations. First, you're going to start off with your bobber stop or your punch stop, and you want to add that onto there. Now if you're casting your Texas rig out more, this isn't as necessary as if you're flipping, but you could always have it and slide it up the line, and when you do need it, you could just slide it back down rather than having to cut and retie and add one afterwards. So the next thing you want to do is slide your weight onto the line. Now again, you can use lead or tungsten, and I know a lot of people are moving over to tungsten because they're more eco-friendly, but when it comes to fishing, they're smaller weights and they're more dense. Now if you're flipping into heavy cover and using a 1 ounce lead weight, you have the big possibility of blowing that fish's mouth open as opposed to using a tungsten weight. Now the next thing you want to do is tie on your hook. Now I'm using the extra wide gap hook for this example, but again you can use whatever hook you'd like, and my knot of choice is the Palomar knot. It's just the one I feel more comfortable with. I feel like if it's a very strong, sturdy knot, but if I'm flipping into some really heavy cover and I'm using a punch rig for example, I'm going to use something like a Snell knot for a little bit more power. Okay, so now that we've talked about the equipment and the rigging, let's talk about actually fishing the Texas rig. Now you can either cast it out if you'd like, or you can flip it short distances into cover. Let me show you how to cast it out and retrieve it properly. So you're going to start off just by casting it out like any other bait. And what you want is to let it fall on a semi-slack line. If your line is too tight, what's going to happen is it's going to hit that water and just pendulum all the way back to you and miss that whole area. But if your line is too loose and a fish decides to come up and bite it as it's falling, you're not going to feel that bite. So a semi-slack line is best. So once your bait hits bottom and you feel it hit bottom, what you want to do is just reel down a little bit just to kind of tighten up your line. but you don't want to use your reel to bring in that bait. What you want to do is use your rod and just bring your rod back like this, and then what you want to do is just reel down the slack. Bring it back and reel down the slack. You can actually feel a lot of the bottom like that, and it's a great way to kind of know the conditions that you're fishing, but also you're crawling it kind of like a crawfish, and that's what you're kind of trying to imitate there. Now you can be a little bit more aggressive if you want. If the fish are a little bit more aggressive, you can hop it. You can even swim it a little bit, but really when it comes to Texas rig fishing, you just want to kind of drag it and then just reel down the slack, drag it up. And so what happens is when you feel that bite, you feel that kind of tick, or you feel the fish come and just destroy that bait, you want to reel down and then set that hook, and that's going to drive the hook up into the fish's mouth. Now when it comes to flipping the bait, it's a short distance cast, and it's going to be pretty much the same thing. So you want to get your bait out there, whether you're flipping or pitching, and you want to again let it fall on some semi-slack line. Now because you're throwing to a specific target, you can actually leave it there a little bit longer. And what I do is I let it get in there, and then I shake it a little bit. And then I'll move it up a little bit. Reel down the slack, shake it a little bit, and then move it up. And if I feel any kind of resistance, if I feel a rock, if I feel a branch, anything like that, then I'm just going to stop and just shake it a little bit. And that gives it a little bit of movement in the water. If there's a fish there, it tends to drive them crazy.
All right, there you go. Hopefully you learned something new about the Texas rig, or at least got a good refresher about it. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and if you're interested in any of the gear in this video, it'll be linked in the description below. Remember to pray, fish, repeat. God bless. I'll see you in my next video.